So you can see that we now have exposed the screw that holds in the motor via the drive hub, and I'll show you what that means as we pull the motor out. But this particular screw, the drive screw here, actually resides underneath where the fabric would be. A lot of times it will reside on the bare tube. Okay, so this fabric has been cut away to get to the screw here. Normally it's going to reside somewhere on the tube where there is no fabric, just as a general rule. But in this case, it's exposed here. So we're going to use our Phillips bit on our drill. We're just going to simply take this screw out. Okay. That's going to allow me to slide the motor out of the tube. You don't want to slide it all the way out yet. The reason for that is there's an end cap on the end of the tube. It has 3 screws. You're going to want to remove those 3 screws so that the end cap will come off, or what we'd call a crown. I should refer to this as a crown, that's what it is, which will allow you to then remove the motor system in its entirety along with the crown out of the tube. You may just have to give it a little bit of a push or a pull. Okay, and now you have the motor system out of the roll tube. You can see this is the drive hub. This is where that screw was in the drive hub here to keep the motor system from sliding out the end of the tube during handling, things of that nature. So that's why that screw is there, to hold everything in place so it doesn't come sliding out the end of the roll tube. Now that we have the motor system outside of the roll tube, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the 2 motor head screws. Now those are Torx screws. So as far as the dimensions on the tools for that, we'll get that to you here in the video at the end. I apologize, I don't have that memorized. There are 2 different sizes. So one is going to be, I got lucky on that, 50% chance I was going to get that one right. Okay, so one's going to be into the plastic of the motor head. The other is actually into a steel insert in the motor head. So they're threaded a little bit differently. This is threaded more like a bolt, okay? And this is threaded more like a screw. So make sure that you put those back where they belong. It should be pretty obvious once you get there. Now you're going to want to pull the motor head straight out. It does take a little bit of pressure to get it pulled straight out. As such, there is sometimes a spacer ring, okay, on the motor collar. And when I say motor collar, that's this portion of the motor head that spins. That's the motor collar. If you find that there's a spacer ring on there, make sure you put the spacer ring on the new motor head. If you don't, more likely your bracket tabs will come in contact with the roll tube as it's turning, which is not a good thing. That's why this little spacer ring is there. Okay, we're going to grab the new motor head, which I have here. Again, make sure you slide the spacer ring on here. You can see there's a little key here, and there's a little keyway on the spacer ring. Make sure that that keyway, okay, I can tighten up just a little bit, okay, goes around the key on the collar so that it fits back into the crown properly. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure, you have to be very, very careful. These tabs are fragile. So you have to make sure that you don't bend these, don't smash them, don't mess them up. The way that you want to make sure that you avoid that, take a look inside the tube and get your orientation correct. So I can see that looking inside here, I know that this motor head is going to be facing this direction because I have everything lined up inside, so that I should be able to slide this in. I can then feel around a little bit, just wiggle it back and forth a little bit, just feel around a little bit to make sure you got everything lined up. Now you can see there's a key on the motor head and there's a keyway in the tube. If those aren't lined up, don't sweat it. just give it a little bit of a twist, okay? That is designed to move, and it is adjustable, so you can just twist it a little bit so that it's lined up and slide it all the way in. Again, if you feel any sort of resistance down here, try it again. And check your pins, okay? If your pins are damaged or bent, you'll know that you weren't lined up properly, okay? But that slid in nice and easy. So we're now going to make sure that we get our appropriate screws back in. This is going to be my threaded bolt, if you will. Okay, that's going to go right back in there where it should go. Make sure it's tight so that it is below the surface of the tube here. Same for this side. Chase that guy down, get over here. And we're going to screw this back in where it was. Okay, get this one down far enough again so the top of the head is below the surface of the tube here. You now have replaced a motor head in a motor. Okay, now getting it back inside the tube is fairly simple and easy, but I will go through that with you. We want to make sure that the keys or the keyways on the drive hub are lined up with the keys of the tube. So I'm going to make sure that I set this in here properly so that it goes in as it should. Same with the crown. Pay attention to how the crown goes back in the tube. Again, the crown has 3 screw holes. Make sure you line those screw holes up with the extrusion where you can see the screws going into the extrusion, and make sure that those are lined up. So I'm going to get those lined up. I'm going to push the crown in. Okay. Sometimes it requires a little bit of pressure. Let me wipe off my hands. Okay, now that I'm going to be touching the fabric again, just to make sure that I'm not leaving any fingerprints on here, okay? All right, we're going to put the screws back in to the crown, and that'll cinch it up nice and tight. And just rotate. Okay, crown has now been screwed back in. Now we have a key on the motor collar that needs to go into a keyway on the crown. Many times that keyway on the crown is marked with a little silver mark so you can find it easily. If you can't find it by a mark, just look at it and turn it until you see that indentation there where that key would go into the keyway. So I'm going to have this key here lined up with my mark. So I'm going to slide it back. I'm going to get my key lined up with the keyway here so that it slides in there. Like that. The spacer ring, make sure that again the spacer ring, see, this is something that I just caught myself doing wrong. Somehow, some way, this spacer ring moved on me, so it's not where it should be in terms of being matched up with the key and the keyway or the opening in the spacer ring. So double check that, make sure you don't miss that part. Everything goes back nice and clean. Okay, everything's good there. Last part of the puzzle here is to get this set screw back in there. While you're doing that, press the motor head inwards to make sure that it's nice and tight, okay, to the roll tube and to the assembly as you screw it in. Just to make sure you don't have any gaps here. Make sure everything over here is nice and tight as it should be. Clean my hands one more time because now it's time to roll the fabric back onto the tube. Any debris, anything of that nature, get it out of your way here. And then we're just going to start rolling this back up onto the tube. Try and do it evenly if you can. And again, try and kind of keep the cords from getting in the middle of what you're doing here. Sometimes they want to find their way into your fabric as you're rolling. As you can see, this part goes pretty easily, pretty quickly once you get on a roll here. That'll get twisted up a little bit. We'll fix that when we're done. Okay, so now we have this rolled back up. Untwist this a little bit. And you are now ready to reinstall your shade system. You're going to obviously cut your cord length to the length that you need. Go ahead and wire it up. Go through the same programming process of the addressing and identification to the transmitter, setting your limits. You're going to have to start from scratch on all of that because you're starting with a new motor, essentially, because all the electronics are new. But at this point in time, we've just replaced a Motorhead in a 110 volt system, and now you're a pro, okay? So hopefully this will be helpful. Lots of luck. Talk to you soon.